Welcome to this storytelling session here at St. Mary's College. I'm Ellen Beams, and I have been a resident here in Moraga for a number of years. We came in 1981. And I have been involved in Moraga Citizens Network and Moraga Chamber of Commerce for the last 5 years. But my love of history has brought me here to spend some time with Brother Mel Anderson. And we're going to talk about the St. Mary's College and the Town of Moraga story. So I hope, Brother Mel, that you could tell us some about the beginnings of the college out here in these beautiful green hills of what we now call Moraga. And just how did the college view the development of the town, developing right outside your boundary? And maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about what kind of relationship you'd like to see between the town and the gown in the next decade. Brother Mel Anderson was born right in California in Oakland. He attended school in Oakland and Berkeley and in Napa. And then when he went to college, he came to the Green Hills of Moraga at St. Mary's College in 1948, where he was a philosophy major. After graduation, Brother Mel spent nearly a decade and a half as a teacher, as a vice principal, and as a principal in several high schools. And then in 1968, he was asked by his alma mater to serve on St. Mary's College Board of Trustees. Just 10 months later, he was asked to assume the presidency of St. Mary's College. At that time, the college had only 900 students, all of them male, and a faculty of about 85. One of the first tasks before President Mel Anderson was the question, should this college become coeducational? Well, in a year, they had made a decision. So in 1970, this college began to accept women as students. During Brother Mel's 28-year presidency, he oversaw many, many things. This college developed and expanded in multiple ways. He oversaw the construction and renovation of 28 campus facilities. He saw a great expansion in the number of different academic programs. For example, the baccalaureate programs were expanded to include programs in accounting and program for older adults. Master's programs were added in business administration, in education and health, and physical education and recreation, psychology, writing, communications, and many more. He established a high potential program for minority students who had the possibility of good academic success. And he revived a crumbling athletic program by hiring a full-time athletic director. While St. Mary's College was growing and expanding under Brother Mel's leadership, the town of Moraga was doing the same thing. But Brother Mel, how about taking us back in history and telling us some of the origins of the college and its move out here to these green hills? And then what has developed here under your leadership and others in the last 80 years?
The date was May 15th, 1927. About 5,000 people came by automobile and the Sacremnto Northern Railway and assembled on a farmland out in what was called Moraga Valley. The occasion was the groundbreaking ceremony for the new St. Mary's College of California. St. Mary's College was located in Oakland at the time, in a building that was built in 1889 and really poorly designed, unfortunately. And the brothers, who had moved from San Francisco prior to that, sought a place where they could have a really first-rate collegiate institution with enough room to expand. The property in Oakland on Broadway, where Piedmont Avenue comes to an end, that property was growing too small for the college. We're right in front of Merritt Hospital, so that gives you an idea of where it was. And the problem was that the building was inadequate, and the property was also inadequate given the fact that St. Mary's had become a rather outstanding football power in the country. Under the guidance of Slip Madigan, who came in 1921 after a disastrous football season where St. Mary's College lost to the University of California by 121-0. And so Slip Madigan, who was a protege of Newt Rockne at Notre Dame, came to the president, Brother Gregory, and said, or he came in December when he was off from school at Notre Dame, and he said, I think I'm your Christmas present, and I can do something for St. Mary's College football, which he did. And so the brothers sought a new place for St. Mary's College, and they had picked a site in San Leandro and had commissioned architect John Donovan to develop plans, and it was a Gothic building that they planned to build in San Leandro, and the plans were almost finished when a gentleman by the name of James Irvine. James Irvine was the head of the Moraga Land Company, and he's the same Irvine that Irvine, California is named after. So he was a rather prominent developer, and he offered the brothers 100 acres of land in Moraga if they would agree to build the college in Moraga. And so the brothers thought about this and came out and looked and thought it was a beautiful place. And of course, Mr. Irvine had plans for the town of Moraga: homes, roads, parks, shopping centers, and even an airstrip for small airplanes to land in Moraga, because he wanted to make it an upscale kind of community. And he thought that single-engine planes could land in Moraga, and this would be a real boon to the area. Well, anyway, the brothers accepted the offer, and they sold the property in San Leandro and bought 300 plus acres to add to the 100 that they were given. So the total acreage of the college property at the beginning was a little over 400 acres, something like 420 or something like that. And they bought, I'll have you know, about 20 feet, or maybe it was a little more, 10 yards or so, over the top of the hills surrounding the college, and they all, so that nobody could build on the top of the hills and look down upon the college. And they also were smart enough to buy the property across the street from where the college entry is now. They bought a strip of property there, so nobody could build a hot dog stand or something like that on the other side to get college students to buy their hot dogs. So they bought that property so that nobody could build on it. And they really thought about this very carefully. So the property in Oakland, they were happy to get out of it, had suffered 2 fires and a disastrous 1906 earthquake. And so they really wanted to move. This looked like paradise, which Moraga tends to be. So we did accept the offer. We moved to here, and therefore that's why we had the groundbreaking ceremonies in 1927. And I'll have you know that after the groundbreaking ceremonies, the class of 1927 from St. Mary's College marched up to the Grove, which is in the southeast corner of the campus. They marched up to the Grove, and the first graduates to graduate from St. Mary's College in Moraga graduated in 1927. So now, 18 months later, the contractors built this college in 18 months, and they built the chapel, the buildings on either side of the chapel, 2 classroom buildings called Dante and Galileo Halls, 3 residence halls. They had to build a lake for water supply, and they had to build a whole sewage disposal plant also on the other side of the dam from the lake that was put in, so that we would be totally self-sufficient. We had no East Bay municipal water, and we had in the water supply, we didn't have East Bay Municipal Utility District either, so that we had to do that all by ourselves. So we were really self-sufficient. And so at that time, we also had to build some athletic fields because of the football program and so forth. So there was a new future for the college, and optimism prevailed. And so the first students came out here in 1928, enjoyed the year, and did a lot of work of landscaping and so forth on their own. And as I say, when we opened up in September of 1929, everybody was really optimistic about what was going to happen next. We had plans to build a new gymnasium and a swimming pool, which were not built when the college opened up, and we had not built a library nor an auditorium, and they figured that, well, that would come later. We would have fundraising and do that. Well, then in October of 1929, the stock market crashed, and that caused a lot of problems for the college. Number one, there was no town. The whole idea of having Mr. Irvine's Moraga Land Company city, that was the end of that. Those plans were shelved. The college was totally alone out here. And of course, we were in terrible debt because the college was built on the pledges of people who generously offered their help, and in 1929, their wealth disappeared. And so did the wealth of the college. And so the college went into terrible debt, or had a terrible debt, and the football program was the one thing that sustained it to some extent, because it was very popular and traveled all over the country. And there was also another figure on the St. Mary's campus that brought fame and some help to it, was Brother Leo Meehan, who was a great orator, English professor, gave commencement addresses at the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Washington, and state of Washington. And I remember as a 10-year-old child, I was with my mother in San Francisco, and I vividly remember the streetcars on Market Street had big signs on this. It just happened the day that I was there. The signs on the side of the streetcars saying, Brother Leo speaks, Opera House tonight, 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever it was. So we had a couple of famous both football players and Brother Leo, who was the academician. Well, this went on for a certain number of years, but they just couldn't sustain it because everybody was in trouble. People had a hard time coming to college because they didn't have any money. And so in 1937, St. Mary's College went bankrupt. And it was put up for auction on the steps of the Alameda County Courthouse. And intermediaries bought it and returned it to the person that was behind the intermediaries, namely the Archbishop of San Francisco, John J. Mitty. And so that's how the brothers got the college back and were saved for the time being, but it was still depression. And the Sacremnto Northern Railway, which of course delivered students to the college, went bankrupt, and they discontinued passenger service in 1941, before the war. Well, in December 7th, 1941, as you know, Pearl Harbor occurred. We were involved in World War II. The college was all male, and it ended up with only a handful of students, just a handful of freshmen and a few people with disabilities or something that could not succumb to the draft. So as a result, the college was put into a position of again, being almost in just a terrible financial strait. However, Brother Austin, who was a plucky Irishman who was president at the time, Brother Austin Crowley, went back to Washington and said St. Mary's College would be a wonderful place for somebody's one of the services to take over, because during the war you could train soldiers out there, and we have this and we have that, and it's a beautiful climate, and you could do it all year long. And he gave a real spiel, and the government bought it, and the Navy took over St. Mary's College from 1942 to 1945, and they built barracks and drill halls and swimming pools and so forth, and they saved the college from from being extinct, is what they did. And so they really were, it was a wonderful boom for the college. And so I can remember going into the drill hall later on, I think in around 1945, when after the Navy had left the college, and I walked into that drill hall, and it was absolutely enormous. And at that time, I guess I was a sophomore in high school or so, and I used to play baseball, and I stood down, went into that drill hall, and threw the ball with all my might. And I don't think it got beyond the middle, and it bounced on the floor and rolled from there. It was just huge, but all that was, of course, after the Navy pulled out, it was all destroyed, taken down, and a few buildings still exist. One, Assumption Hall, which is on the east side of the campus, and there's a building in the college union that was built by the Navy, and they built it according to the design of the campus. And so we were able to keep that building, and now, of course, it's kind of smothered in the whole college union buildings that are there, but it's still there. Those are the only two buildings that exist from those days of the Navy. However, after the war, the GIs all had a GI Bill, and of course, they flooded the college. In 1948, when I came as a freshman, I think I'd give you two observations. There were no homes across the street from the college, and on either side, east or the west. Those hadn't even been developed yet. And so, but the college was beginning to pick up by the number of students that came from the GI Bill. And there were a lot of them here when I was a freshman in 1948. And so the college began to pick up. However, a disaster came in 1950 with the Korean War. And again, we were an all-male student body, and we were reduced by about 40% or so immediately. And so there was some deferments, but it was really touch and go. And the brothers had to think whether or not they would have to sell the college, because we just couldn't, it was unsustainable under those circumstances. We had to drop football, and that was for several reasons. Number one, the expenses, but there was a new rule put in for college football called the free substitution rule, which gave rise to the platoon system, where you had an offensive team and a defensive team, whereas before the same team had to play offense and defense, and if you took a player out in one quarter, the player couldn't go back to the next one. The rules were all changed, and with the free substitution rule, you had kickers and field goal kickers and all that sort of thing. So you had specialties, and as I say, the platoon system, very few of the smaller institutions could maintain a football team. And so not only did we, but also USF, Santa Clara, Loyola, and all those institutions around had to give up football. So in 1954, after struggling through the Korean War, there was a return of GIs from the Korean War, and we had to build more residence halls, and so there were two built in 1961, two in 1968, and a library, which we hadn't had since the beginning of the college in Moraga. That was built in 1968. And so the college at that time, and now we'll get into the Moraga, at that time, the college had a rather distant relationship with the Board of Supervisors in the county, Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors. And so if we needed a building built, we went out there, and they were planning committee, and so it was kind of a casual relationship. And if we wanted to cut down trees or put in a road or build a fence or build something, we went ahead and did it, and nobody seemed to care anything about that. Well, then we still only had about 850 to 900 men and about a faculty of 80, I think you already mentioned. And so I thought, this isn't going to work. First thing I did was, I became president in 1969. The first thing I did was look at the books. We were in debt, still in debt, over a couple $100,000. Now that doesn't sound like much money now, but in 1969, that was a lot of money. So I said, we've got to do something about increasing the student body. We did a lot of study, and we said, we've got to go co-education. We were the last all-male college in California, the major male college like USF, Santa Clara, Loyola. They had all gone co-education prior to us. And I said it was silly to hold out any longer. So we studied very carefully and said this would be a good thing to do, which we did. And so the first women, as you mentioned, came in 1970. And so we were very pleased to see how it was a little rough getting adjusted, but it worked. And as I told people, many of the men found the woman of their dreams, and likewise many of the women found the men of their, I wouldn't say nightmares, but certainly their dreams. Anyway, in 1974, something highly significant, however, happened in the Moraga area. The people of Moraga decided that they wanted to incorporate. And so they went through, and the votes came out in favor of incorporation through a lot of work by a lot of people to make sure that it happened. And the charter was granted to the city of the town of Moraga. And so what happened was everybody had to have a little change in attitude, because as soon as you had a council and you had a design review board and your own police department and your own fire department, there were new procedures, new laws, new demands, and we had to come up with our own master plan. The town asked, look, we've got to have a master plan. What is the college going to do? What kind of buildings are you going to build? You can't just do it piecemeal. What's your overall plan? So we had to develop that and have that approved by the town. And then there were some touchy moments here and there, and I don't necessarily want to go into all those, but there were some touchy moments where there were some disagreements, but most of those were ironed out quite well. And of course, we realized that we really had to have a liaison between ourselves and the college, the city, which we established, and they were very happy to have that so that they knew what was going on at our place, and we knew what they were doing with the town of Moraga, so that we could actually have a good cooperative relationship between town and gown rather than have any kind of conflict. So I think it worked out quite well, and let's bring us up to date. Today, in 1969, as I said, we had about 800 to 900 students and 80 faculty. Today, we have about 2,500 men and women, undergraduates, of which 1,650 live on campus. And of course, this changes the campus considerably. We have to have a security force, for example, which is almost the same size as the Moraga Police Department, because we have to protect these students and make sure that everything runs properly. We also have a graduate program, and I know those people live on campus. There are very few, maybe a couple, one or two, but we have over 1,000 graduate students in the education department, creative writing, MBA programs, and so forth. And so there was building activity taking place. As you said, we were building, we were growing at the same time that Moraga was growing. Now, by the time, of course, of 69, we began to see houses spring up across the street from us and on either side. So that we have the Moraga Estate, the St. Mary's Estates, and group up on the hill over. So they were all, that was all beginning to grow. We had neighbors, very close neighbors. And so in the meantime, we were building too. So we built we've built 13 residence halls up to now, 2 classroom buildings, 1 science facility, beautiful science facility, 1 art center, 3 administration facilities, 1 student center, which is called the Soda Center. It has nothing to do with Coca-Cola or 7-Up or anything like that. It so happens that the name of the donor, the main donor, was Y. Charles Soda. And so he was Italian, and I suspect that probably the folks, his ancestors that came from Italy, were probably soderini or something like that, and it was shortened to soda because it would be simple and sounded very American. So, but he wasn't Italian, and that's the Soda Center, how it got its name. We had one gymnasium, McEwen Pavilion, and then tennis courts, and football field, a beautiful education building, performing arts, and so forth. And we also had, because of expansion of office, need of office space, we bought the old Lucky Store in Rheem, and that has become what is called our Moraga campus, or our Rheem campus over there. So that's the reason that that's over there, because we just had to expand so much. So we put development, and I have to say that with all this building, you have to have a very good fundraising program, and that requires a very good director and a lot of leadership and a lot of people to go out and talk to donors, not only alumni, but friends of the college, their parents, and then people that are just interested in St. Mary's College. And so we are able to do that. Now, the other thing I want to mention too, and I think this is something very important. St. Mary's College, of course, is a, I should, before I say this, I should mention one other thing. The recent basketball notoriety kind of reminded me of the heyday of football, which I say ended in 1951, but I can remember as a student. The first game was St. Mary's College versus the University of California. That was always over, and then we'd get 80,000 people to go to those games. And USC and UCLA, and of course when we played under Slip Madigan, the famous game with Fordham University in New York, we had what were called a whole lot of the streetcar alumni. And they were not necessarily students, but they all were fans of St. Mary's College football. And so they had a train that went from St. Mary's College, or from Oakland, all the way to New York, and to take this crowd of people to watch St. Mary's play Fordham University in New York. And of course, it was called the longest traveling bar in the world, which was probably true given the name of the kind of people that were on that train. Anyway, let me get back to what I was going to say about St. Mary's College. All of our undergraduates take courses in the liberal arts. So when I say all of our undergraduates, we have 3 undergraduate schools: the School of Liberal Arts, the School of Science, and the School of Business Administration and Economics. But all of those students are given a smattering, some more, some less, but they all have a liberal arts education, because we believe that it's because of the education of people and their insight and their understanding of human nature and the history of the world. Those are the kind of people that are going to be the leaders of our American democracy. And so what we have these people do, every student takes what we call the collegiate seminar. And those are 4 courses over the period of either 4 years or 4 semesters. And they start with reading the Greeks. And they read those in their original, not in the Greek language, but in their original. They don't read about the Greeks or somebody says about. We read Aristotle as Aristotle said it, or Plato as Plato said it, Socrates was written about. Or we read the plays of Sophocles or Aristophanes. We read those directly and discuss them in the class. We try to get by the jargon and the half-baked notions and the film clips of today, the kinds of things. We try to get our students to speak articulately about these books and concentrate on these things, what they mean, what these ideas were. And of course, then we go from Aristotle to the medieval, to the Christian Roman traditions. We read Augustine and Lucretius, The Nature of Things, and so forth. And then we move into the medieval times, the 17th, 16th, 17th centuries. And then we move to the moderns, and we read people like Marx, Darwin, Freud, Shaw, Kafka, Weber, Newman. We read all those people and talk about them, so our students come out of St. Mary's College with a good understanding of the whole historical tradition of philosophy and literature, poetry, whatever, at least they have. So whether a person ends up being a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a businessman, they have this background. And we think it's very important. And we aim to have these students discuss articulately and defend their views as they go through these courses. And as I say, if each student could master even the thinking of Aristotle or Plato, we'd be in pretty good hands. And also we have 2 courses in religious studies. We should mention that because no one is compelled to be a Catholic, and about half of our students are not necessarily Catholic. And some that claim to be Catholic maybe don't practice their Catholicism, but that's the way things are. We have in our theology faculty, we have a rabbi, we have several Protestant instructors, and we have, of course, Catholics in the religious studies department also. And our aim is to inspire students to take religion seriously, but to come to their own conclusions. And that would be the liberal arts approach. We also have an active campus ministry, but no one is compelled to attend chapel services. That's voluntary. And we find that if students are compelled to do things like that, sometimes you get a negative reaction. It's much better that people do things of their own free will and be encouraged by the way we act and the way we deal with students and so forth. And that is more important than compelling people to attend chapel services. We just don't think that's the way to go. And as I say, the philosophy behind America's success is that we have well-educated, thoughtful people, and that's what we try to produce. As Churchill once said, Americans usually get it right after they've tried just about everything else. And so sometimes, in a way, that's what we like our students to do. They read all these books, they get all these ideas, and they think about them, but they come up with their own conclusions for themselves. And that's what we're aiming for, and we hope that we are successful. I would like to say one other point about with Moraga and with this latest basketball notoriety. On our website, we received about 1 million hits on the website when we got as far as the Sweet 16 last year. And the 2 questions, the 2 most frequent questions that we heard on the website were, where is Moraga and where is St. Mary's College? And now I notice that the Moraga website has on it the home of St. Mary's College, which of course we're very pleased to see. And we hope, of course, that our relationship with St. Mary's College, and as I said, we have somebody that is very closely aligned as an intermediary between the city council and the college. And last year, as you know, we had the Barbara Boxer, the 2 Congress people had their debate on the St. Mary's College campus, and of course, again, we gave ourselves and Moraga quite a little bit of notoriety, and we're now trying to get a presidential debate for next year, and we're working on that, and that would be wonderful if we could do that, and it would bring great fame to Moraga as well as to St. Mary's College, just to do something like that. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking of, and of course we have more ideas about expanding. We hope to enlarge the gymnasium, the library, and we probably build some more residence halls because we're getting hard pressed for our residence hall, and all this has to deal with the town of Moraga. I think we can work out, and we'd also like to build a parking structure one of these days because we're kind of tired of seeing too much asphalt on the campus. It's much better to build a structure and then have cars stacked up rather than, because if you have to park them on the campus, you lose the beauty of the campus, and you also, it causes a great deal of problem with the creeks and the rivers, the creek especially because of the runoff. So what we'd like to do is build some parking structures for the needs of the students, as well as for events that we have, and we need the parking. So those are some of the things we're thinking about for the future. But anyway, St. Mary's College is very proud to be part of Moraga, and we hope that the Moraga Town Council and all the citizens are proud to have St. Mary's in their midst.